Hey guys, this is KillRob speaking, and today we continue our investigation of the rune hunting aspect within the classic ARPG Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction. This knowledge mini-series is focused on the most reliable and available source of runes in the game, the Countess. In the first episode, I showed and analyzed the drop rates from 300 Hell difficulty Countess runs in the form of a rune drop diary, while the second episode delved deeper into the rune statistics and includes an in-depth analysis of the commonalities and differences in Countess rune drops between the three difficulty levels. If you haven't watched either of the first two episodes yet, I would recommend you do so first. Links are in the description below this video. In this final episode, we are going to tackle three topics. First up is the feasibility of running the Countess to find complete sets of runes for Runewords in each of the three difficulty levels, including a quick rundown of the best Runewords to grab during normal play. Second is a somewhat in-depth discussion of the methodology utilized to determine how many rune runs are needed, its accuracy and its flaws. In the third and last part of this episode, I'll provide a quick overview of the tower map generation algorithms to speed up your tower runs, especially in multiplayer mode where maps always reset between games. In order to get started, we need a refresher on what data is used and how it was generated. 300 Countess runs were conducted per difficulty level and diligently recorded. Subsequently, all this data from the 900 runs in total was analyzed. The effective rune availability expressed in the number of runs needed to get a specific rune was calculated both as direct finds and considering cubing of all lower runes found. Cubing allows reaching beyond what runes can be found directly and smoothens out some of the microstructures in the data as well as statistical fluctuations. These are the two sets of values used to calculate runeword feasibility. The average number of runs needed to find a rune directly and the number of runs needed until the cubing of a rune is possible. Before heading straight into the results, let us define what question we wanted to have answered in the first place. How many Countess runs are needed, on average, in order to find and/or cube all required runes for specific runewords on a specific difficulty level? Now we shall take a look at the final results of our investigation. As you will see in the discussion part thereafter, you need to take these results with a grain of salt, but they should be usable ballpark figures. Another disclaimer is in order. My comments regarding the individual runewords' usefulness are of course just an opinion and yours may differ. I have a single player mode perspective on this topic and that most likely will shine through. But now, let's start out with normal difficulty. The easiest to acquire and probably most overpowered and useful early game runeword is Stealth, Tal F. I can't think of a situation where you don't want to get the runes to make a stealth armor in a few levels time. The modifiers are just amazing for low to mid-level characters. For any spellcaster focusing on fire spells like a sorceress or even a druid build, the second easiest runeword on the list is Fantastic. Leaf is made out of Tyr and Ral, and on average you'll get it after about 5 runs. The flat plus 3 to all fire skills of course is the highlight, but not to be underestimated is the very handy mana after each kill. The defense is nice to have on a low level character too. To get the Stealth plus Leaf combo, you only need about 6 to 7 runs. Definitely worth it if you are in need of some leveling anyway. Next up are two runewords that don't directly spring to mind when thinking of the Countess in normal difficulty, because they both contain an odd rune, which cannot drop directly from the Countess, but needs to be cubed once the cube becomes available in Act 2. Sapphire is the go-to weapon for any Boazon, or indeed Boadin, who isn't lucky enough to find some of the unique bows early on. Amazing speed in both attack and running, with plenty of elemental damage on top, and some help to hit enemies in late normal and early nightmare difficulty. The Ancient's Pledge is similar in that it is the go-to shield if your build requires one and you want to play it safe throughout normal. Any hardcore build using a shield may want to invest about 7 runs into getting the rune word early. Sure, you can't use it yet, but in mid to late Act 2, this will help out drastically against all kinds of elemental attacks and will keep your mana up. Holy Thunder is achievable with just 7 to 8 runs, but I really wonder why it is there, as you won't get any 4-socket scepters until much later in the game. Nadir is quite useful but not amazing, and considering it takes so many runs to get because of the Neph rune, you might want to give this a pass unless you stumble upon a Neph rune in your runs for a stealth armor. What once was meant to be the first rune word that people would get, now has turned into a pretty much obsolete relic. Steel is relatively difficult to get at 11 runs because the L rune is a rather rare find from the Countess. It would be a great rune word for low levels otherwise. So if you are lucky or indeed unlucky enough to get an L rune during your early Countess runs and you use a sword, keep this one in mind. Malice, on the other hand, will be a great rune word throughout normal and early nightmare difficulty. It is hard to get just because of that damn L rune once again, but has some amazing boss slaying modifiers like the open wounds and minus defense per hit. All Act bosses have 0 defense within a handful of hits with this one. And these are all relevant rune words for normal difficulty that you can get doing a Countess runs, all following rune words like Strength and King's Grace in single player and Edge and Spirit on ladder need an arm rune, which is quite out of reach unless you're in for some grind, which doesn't make much sense in normal difficulty. Now we continue to nightmare difficulty, and with that, a much larger variety of runes that can drop from the Countess. Please note though that there are many more rune words on this list than I can cover in a reasonable amount of time. You should check out the full list yourself to fuel those self-found run dreams. I have compiled all of this information into an awesome little poster. Feel free to download it, a link is in the description below. And if you enjoy my work, please like and consider throwing me $1 on Patreon. That indeed would be amazing. But anyway, here are some of my picks for nightmare difficulty. The easiest to get rune word in Nightmare, which was not feasible in normal difficulty, sitting at 158 runs on average, needs a mere 9 runs on average in order to get a Soul and an Ort rune. Lore is great for any character that is heavily skill dependent due to the +1 to all skills. The mana after each kill and the lightning resist sure helps too, especially preparing you for the lightning enchanted bosses and beetles in Act 2. Rhyme, made out of Shael and an F rune, is just amazing. Cannot be frozen is massively important throughout the game, and the resists are decent, and the block rate is helpful for slow blocking characters like the Sorceress. The magic find and extra gold is a bonus on top to make this an awesome rune word and an option for every shield user throughout Nightmare and beyond, until you find some good unique or can get a better rune word. Like the completely overpowered ladder only spirit rune word, for instance. If you are a caster using a shield and you play ladder, then spirit is the go-to solution, starting right here. 11 quick runs on average and you should have all the runes you need. The strength rune word isn't really that good at this point, unless you are a frenzy barb and make 2 of them in about 24 runs. Nice switch to have for killing bosses because of the 25% crushing blow. The next one is the first class-specific rune word available and an absolute must-get for most Amazon builds at this point in the game. Peace can be obtained in about 13 runs and comes with +2 to all skills, faster hit recovery and a tank that is refreshed automatically every now and then. The next overpowered ladder only rune word, Insight, is next. This is the go-to weapon for your Act 2 mercenaries, and at this point in the game and beyond, most likely, is just everything you'd want for just 15 runs. The, in my opinion, weakest class armor, Myth, for a barbarian is coming in at 18 runs, but I don't know why you'd use it unless you are a cry barb and you're out of options. What definitely is worth getting for a bone necro is white. 23 runs may sound like a lot, but using this rune word, you probably get back that time really quick by just flying through Nightmare difficulty with it. And +3 to all poison and bone skills with another bonus to bone armor and, more importantly, bone spear on top, plus faster cast rate. This is endgame material. Well, at least in single player it is. Smoke is pretty good if you have resistance problems, but finding that Loom rune may take a while. If you get a quick one and just require a Neph rune, looking for it in normal difficulty might be the quicker option. And now, we've entered the realm of pain. Hell difficulty, Countess runs, and in general a lot more grinding to get those precious higher up rune words. Here you need to take into account that the overall runtime has increased a lot compared to Nightmare difficulty, making it more grindy than it was. But then again, if you've made it this far into this video, these might just be for you. The only somewhat quick to get rune words are both for missile weapons. The interesting ladder only rune word Harmony with lots of elemental damages and vigor aura on equip, as well as Walkries for everyone, and the rune word Melody, which at this point would be a good upgrade in case you have not found any good unique bows. A big jump to the next rune word, Lionheart at 72 runs, is an interesting concept, but a little underpowered. It has stats that equate a whopping 14 level ups, a good resistance bonus of +30 to all, but not much else. Treachery is the Assassin's class specific armor rune word and requires around 76 runs to get, mostly because of the Lem rune. The amazing increased attack speed and other useful stats actually make it better than Myth, even if you are a barbarian. It is a really good armor to make for any melee character looking for some more oomph. Obedience is, well, look at it. This is ridiculously good for 86 runs. Give it to an Act 2 mercenary on ladder and watch him solo act bosses in hell. This is, of course, just a little excerpt from the full list, which you should check out yourself. Again, the download link is in the description below. But now, for all you proper nerds out there, this next part is for you. Before taking a look at the not entirely straightforward and to most not all too trivial methodology, let's restate the question the methodology attempts to answer. How many Countess runs are needed, on average, in order to find and/or cube all required runes for specific rune words on a specific difficulty level? There are many ways to answer that question, some more precise than others, others more practical than some. The most precise way I can think of is to use the theoretical Countess drop chances on a given difficulty level, feeding them into a drop randomizer simulation which runs the Countess until all runes are either found directly or cubed. This would have to be repeated for thousands of times for each rune word, and the number of runs required each time averaged. This would give the most realistic and accurate result and would not run into either combinatorics hell or inadequacies of the method I shall employ here. So without that, and using only the current available data, how can one best answer the posed question? The following probably is too technical for most to fully grasp on a first run through, but I hope some examples along the way will show the process and keep it interesting. I worked out a pretty simple method that relies on the fact that each rune needed to make a rune word is independent of all the other required runes. If you need a Tal and an F rune to make a stealth, you don't need to run an average of 3.2 plus 2.2 times, because you look for both runes at the same time independently. The runes are independent in the physics and mathematics sense of the word, which means that their vectors are perpendicular to each other. Wait, what? Yes, it gets a little technical in here, hang in there. If the runes truly are independent finds, then they make up an n-dimensional vector where n is the number of runes in the rune word. Each dimension is given the value that corresponds to the average number of runs required to get that specific rune, and the length of the resulting vector is the average number of runs we need to do to acquire the full rune word. Pretty simple. Wait, what? Okay, let's take stealth as an example in normal difficulty. Tal and F indeed are pretty independent, as you need 9 Fs to make a single Tal rune. Thus we shall disregard any cubing, and the problem becomes that of determining the length of a 2-dimensional vector in Cartesian coordinates. The length indeed is not 3.2 plus 2.2 equals 5.4, but rather square root out of 3.2 to the square plus 2.2 to the square, which equals 3.9, which makes sense as you're looking for both runes at the same time. So it should take a little longer on average to find them both than to find the more difficult one of them on its own. Fortunately, it is really easy to calculate the length of an n-dimensional vector too. We just add up more of the squared values under the square root. One complication is runes that are beyond the reach of the Countess-specific drops, the ones you can acquire only via cubing. These runes cannot entirely be considered to be acquired in parallel to the ones you can find directly, but neither does it make sense to consider them as completely additive. Consider the example of the runeword's strength, which is arm plus tier. The number of runs needed to get an arm rune cubed up is an average of 51. The average number of runs needed to get a tier rune is 4.2. From just a gut feeling, we know that if you make an arm rune, you will more or less for free get a tier rune along the way. So is it 51 plus 4.2, or should we get the vector length? Using the vector length method, the result is very close to what feels right, 51.2. So in this case, indeed, treating them in the same way as reachable runes does work well. But what if there is more than one rune out of reach? The simple solution is to add the average number of runs needed for all out of reach runes before squaring, instead of after squaring, because you actually do need to run the sum of these in order to get enough rune material to cube them. An example for this would be the rune word King's Grace, needing Arm, Ral and Fool, where both Fool and Arm are out of reach of normal difficulty. Calculating it the normal way, we would end up with a square root of 51 squared plus 2.9 squared plus 17 squared equals 53.8, which absolutely cannot be true. If we instead do as I suggest, it looks like this. Square root out of 2.9 square plus 51 plus 17, which is 68, and that to the square, and that overall gives us 68.1, which again makes more sense, as it basically should be as difficult as cubing up to get both an Arm and a Fool rune, which is 17 plus 51, which equals 68 runs. But also in this case, it shows a weakness of the calculations, as reality probably would be closer to a straight up 2.9 plus 51 plus 17 equals 71 runs. That is because the Ral rune is at the very top of the list of droppable runes in the difficulty. What this means is the following. These calculations give ballpark correct figures for how many runs are needed, and considering the inherent variance of the data we base all of this on, due to the limited number of runs conducted, especially in Hell difficulty for higher runes, this small-ish inadequacy should not stand in our way. Just be aware that you need to take these results with a grain of salt, plus minus a spoon of salt. I should add that in my calculations, for any rune that is a co-rune or higher, I use the numbers from the cubed results table only, as the higher runes are so rare that a little cubing will almost always help along the way. You made it through, in one piece, hopefully. Now there's only one thing left to discuss. How do you best navigate the different tower levels? Where do you need to look for the exit? As this video is very long already and I have the wrong version of Diablo 2 installed at the moment for my classic version 1.00 Let's Play, I shall make this short. Credit for this information of course goes to Mr. Llama and his Diablo 2 speedrunning series. I linked his video in the description below so that you can check it out, and his series and his channel, which has loads of excellent Diablo content on it. To summarize his findings, the tower maps are made from pre-built blocks with a given relative alignment between the entry and the exit block. The word relative is crucial here. It means that the positioning is not absolute. This difference between relative and absolute in this case can be illustrated by comparing the imperatives go north and go left. Go north always means the same thing independent of where you're facing at the moment. It is an absolute, while go left is relative to the way a person is facing. The way the exit door faces is irrelevant, but the corridor that leads towards the exit is the direction that determines the block's alignment. The way the entrance faces is irrelevant, but the corridor that leads away from the entrance determines its alignment. Note that we define the direction of the entrance block as the one we take heading out of the block, but the exit direction is defined as the direction we take walking into the exit block. So now that we have these definitions out of the way, the simple rule that always holds true on the tower maps is the following. The direction of the exit block is pointing left compared to the direction of the entrance block. That doesn't tell you exactly where the exit is, but in most cases it makes finding the exit a lot simpler. Head left and go as far as possible once you are out of your entrance block. In many cases it is actually that simple. Sometimes the game generates more complex maps where the rule still holds true, but the exit block is not on the left edge of the map. From here, I suggest you go exploring and looking at how this rule plays out in practice. It is really simple, and I use it every single time I enter a newly generated tower on any difficulty level, and it helps amazingly well. And so it has come to this, the conclusion of the Countess Knowledge mini-series. Please share, like, and maybe check out some of my other Diablo 2 content on my channel. I hope you enjoyed, and see you guys next time!